I still remember the moment I realized they'd actually done it. We'd been at that lakeside cabin, the one my wife Jen and her college friends had rented for a relaxing guys versus girls weekend, laughing over charcuterie boards and two strong margaritas. It was supposed to be a friendly competition. Guys go fishing on the canoe, girls hike the trail for wildflowers. We'd all packed extra overnight bags, planning to stay 2 nights. Late Saturday afternoon, I returned from the lake with my cooler of trout, proud of my haul, wet hair matted to my neck, face streaming with sweat and satisfaction. The girls greeted me at the dock, their lacy sundresses bright against the pines. But as I stepped onto the wooden planks, I saw their faces weren't happy. They were grinning, but differently. Popcorn in mouth, camera-ready grins, the kind you see right before someone yells, "Surprise!" "Hey babe," Jen said, breathless. "We've got a surprise for you." She held up her phone, pointed at a group photo of her and the girls, Madeline, Sarah, Claire, tall and tanned, arms around each other. Behind them, the cabin door shut tight. "Isn't that your cooler?" "We borrowed it." I furrowed my brow. "What's going on?" Madeline giggled. "Oh, it's going to be funny, Mickey. Just wait." Suddenly, an SUV, a rented black SUV, roared around the little peninsula, skid to a stop, and two of the girls jumped in the back while Claire slid into the driver's seat. Engines revved. I blinked. "Where are you?" I started. Jen held up her hand. "Just come with us. We have reservations for a spa treatment out of state." "You can come too." I shook my head. "Wait, my fishing gear, my cooler, my keys." They waved at me as the SUV peeled away, the motor whining. My cooler bobbed on the dock. I shouted, "Guys, come back!" But the cabin's stoic wooden walls and the gentle lap of the lake answered me instead. My phone lay in my pocket, no cell service in this valley. I'd left my keys in that SUV. My wallet and driver's license tucked into the cooler's mesh pocket. They'd left me stranded. I sat on the dock, legs dangling, eyes scanning the tree line, where the narrow dirt road wound back through the forest. The sun was inching toward the pines. The realization sank in, my wife and her friends, summoning bachelor trip hilarity, had abandoned me in another state. Their laughter and smirks had vanished into that SUV, replaced by the endless chirp of crickets and the faint plink of fishing bobbers. I checked my watch, 4:16 p.m. They'd vanished 15 minutes ago. The spa reservation on Jen's phone, she'd shown it, was for an hour's drive southeast, someplace called Serenity Springs. That meant they'd crossed the state line. And I had nothing but a cooler full of fish and a pocket full of lint. I called out to the cabin, voice echoing, "I'm not going to die out here, guys. I'll see you soon." But my promise sounded hollow even to me. I pulled myself to my feet and loaded the trout into the cooler lid, tied it shut, hefted it over my shoulder like some absurd mailman delivering fresh fish. I climbed the stairs to the cabin's porch, kicked the glass door until it clicked open, and shook my head at the empty living room, their shoes scattered by the door, half-empty wine glasses on the counter. A hastily scribbled note on scrap paper taped to the fridge read, "Gone for a spa day." Signed, J and Company. Underneath, a heart. He crumpled the note, shoved it into my jeans back pocket, and strode into the bedroom. The keys were gone from the nightstand. The car they'd driven, the only one in the gravel drive. My bike, my mountain bike, sat leaning against the deck rail, tires flat with neglect. I joked that I'd finally fix my bike, take the trail, never realized I'd have nothing else. Back on the porch, I set the cooler down, wiped sweat from my forehead. They meant to toy with me, cast me off so I'd beg for rescue, call them apologizing, begging forgiveness. My chest burned with humiliation and rage. But the words tumbling through my mind weren't forgive and forget, they were let's see how funny this really is. I dragged the cooler down the porch steps and dumped the trout into the lake, watching them scatter like slivers of silver panic. Then I swung the cooler to the ground with a thud. I needed a plan. First, I needed a phone. I hiked up the dirt road, cooler abandoned behind me, like evidence at a crime scene. 2 miles up, I found a tiny convenience store, weathered wood siding, neon, open, sign half lost in midday glare. I pushed the door open, bell on the handle jingling too loudly. Inside, dusty shelves of snacks, a humming fridge full of beer, and a single payphone near the register. I plucked a quarter from my pocket and dialed my best friend, Aaron. "Dude, it's an emergency," I said when he picked up second ring. "What's up?" His voice crackled with worry. He knew me well. "My wife and her friends left me stranded in God knows where," I said, voice cracking. "They rented a black SUV and drove off. I've got no keys, No license, nothing. He whistled. Classic. Where are you? I'm at a convenience store, no cell service. Can you head to Serenity Springs Spa and intercept, get my keys, or I'll freeze out here? I sounded desperate, but also tinged with anger. Think you can do that? On it, he said. I'll text you when I arrive and get your keys from them. Hang tight. I hung up, swiped a can of seltzer, paid the cashier. The owner watched me with blank eyes, seen it all, probably. Back outside, I hiked down, sun burning. Next, I needed a car. My bike's tires were shot, but to the right of the store, a battered pickup truck sat parked. One of those for sale signs scratched onto the windshield. $1,200 OBO. I kicked the wheel. Tires looked intact. I walked around, checked inside. Seat dusty but intact. Keys were in the ignition. Someone had dropped them. Jackpot. I slid in, breathed deep, cranked the engine. Respirator cough, then purr of ancient power. I engaged reverse, rammed past the cooler, halfway blocking the road, then eased forward onto the dirt track. Seltzer-can rattled in the cup holder. My victory sip later. Road grit streaked the windshield. I nearly laughed. I am MacGyver, I muttered, the first genuine smile of the day. I set the GPS for Serenity Springs on my phone. LTE service flickered back. It was a 45-minute drive. Perfect. By 5:45 p.m., I pulled into the Serenity Springs parking lot, brick facade, manicured gardens, fancy fountain spouting lotus blooms. Jen's SUV was there. I popped the door, strolled across the lot, and there they were. Jen, Madeline, Sarah, Claire, dripping in towels, hair damp, face scrub masks drying in the spa's amber lights. They were sipping cucumber water in plush robes, oblivious to the world outside. When they spotted me, their jaws dropped. Mike, Jen stammered, towel droplets clinging to her cheeks. How did you? I rode a $1,200 pickup truck you didn't buy, I said, arms spread, the mud-splattered windshield behind me. Where are my keys? Madeline turned pale, banging her hand on the cucumber water table. We told Aaron to bring them. I cut her off. Actually, Aaron is on his way to you. You forget I have friends? Meanwhile, I had to drive a pickup across 2 state lines just to get here. Sarah's face crumpled. Mike, we were practicing the big reveal. It was going to be an epic prank. I laughed, but it didn't sound funny. A prank. You left me to die in the woods, with only a cooler full of rotting fish and one more Pokémon in my backpack. How's that epic? They stammered. Jen grabbed my arm. I'm so sore, I yanked back. Don't, just don't. I spun, stormed across the pavement, headed to the pickup. I threw myself inside, started the engine. We're leaving, I barked. They ran after the truck. Get in, Jen shrieked as she hopped into the passenger seat. Madeline and Claire clambered in back. Sarah lunged for the door, too slow, slamming it shut as I put it in gear. The mud flung backward, spraying across the pavement. I pulled away, leaving the spa's white columns behind. Their voices drifted on the wind, apologies please, but nothing that cut through my resolve. They'd underestimated me. 45 minutes later, I parked outside the cabin under the pines. The sun was setting, burning gold through the branches. They shuffled out of the truck, hair bedraggled, faces downcast. I leaned against the hood, waiting. Jen approached. Mike, please. I raised a hand. Did any of you think this through? I could have been eaten by a bear, lost in traffic, kidnapped by spa terrorists. Sarah's eyes welled. We were joking. We wanted a story we could laugh about for years. I pointed at the cabin. I don't care about stories. I care about respect. I care about being part of your lives, not the punchline of your weekend getaway. You think abandonment is funny? Not to me. They sank onto log benches scattered by the fire pit. One by one, apologies emerged. Genuine, tearful. But I stayed silent, staring at the cabin that had watched me scatter my trout and cradle my humiliation. Finally, Madeline said quietly, "What do you want us to do?" I exhaled. "First," I said, "you're going to spend the night out here without phones. You're going to sit by that fire, face your stupidity. We'll eat s'mores and talk. No jokes. Tomorrow, at sunrise, we'll hike up that trail. Silence until we reach the summit." They looked at each other, hesitated, then nodded. Despair mingled with relief in their eyes. They understood. I climbed inside the cabin, turned on the old propane heater. They followed, shivering. I set a pot of chili on the stove. No margaritas tonight, I said. We talk, or you sleep on the porch. They hung their heads. Jen met my gaze, lips trembling. We're sorry, she said again. We'll listen. And as the wind rattled the windows, I realized this reckoning, cold, honest, raw, was exactly what I needed to decide if I could ever trust them again. Tomorrow we'd walk together toward forgiveness or fracture. But tonight I held the keys, literally and figuratively, to their redemption. The morning air was crisp, the pines heavy with dew, when I roused the four of them from their makeshift beds on the porch. The sun was just peeking over the ridge, painting the sky in ribbons of gold and pink. I stood by the fire pit, arms crossed, watching as Jen, Madeline, Sarah, and Claire gathered their jackets, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Time to go, I said, voice firm but not unkind. Jen stepped forward, voice small. Are you really going to make us hike up? I nodded. Silence until the summit. Then we talk. They exchanged nervous glances, wordlessly shouldering their backpacks. No one argued. We set off up the narrow trail, a ribbon of dirt and pine needles snaking between trunks. The only sound was crunching underfoot, and the occasional bird call. I led, deliberately slow, so they had time to think. By the time we reached the halfway ledge, where a boulder jutted out over the valley, the silence felt less brittle and more contemplative. They stood behind me, peering down at the mist, clinging to the forest floor. I waited, then asked, "What were you thinking?" Sarah swallowed. We weren't. We were just having fun." Claire kicked at a rock. "We wanted a story, something epic." I stared at the distant hills. "You made me someone else's story. You turned my trust into an anecdote. Remember the time Mike got left behind?" My voice cracked. "That wasn't fun. That was hurtful." Madeline looked at her feet. "I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't think. It wasn't just you," I said. "It was all of you. We were supposed to be a team this weekend. You left me out of it." Jen stepped beside me. "We forgot you were part of the team." Her voice was raw. "We were so wrapped up in our fun, we didn't see how it would affect you." That was the first genuine admission, the first crack in their defenses. I nodded slowly. "Okay, you forgot. But forgetting doesn't mean it didn't hurt." We resumed the hike, and finally broke silence again at the summit, a flat ledge overlooking a panorama of peaks. A lone pine grew near the edge, its branches shiver green against the sky. I turned to face them. "Look at this," I said, gesturing. "I'd have missed this if I'd stayed forgotten at the cabin." I let the wind fill the moment. That hurt took me away from this view. But forgiveness can bring me back. Their eyes brimmed. Jen wiped her nose. "Mike, I know this can't just go away." I shook my head. "No, you have to earn it." Madeline's lip quivered. "We will. We promise." "Okay," I said. "Right now, here's what you owe me. One photo each of yourself, taking in this view. No filters. Then a group photo, with me included." They hesitated, then fished their phones out. One by one, they snapped silent selfies, faces awash in dawn's glow. Then they huddled close to me for the group shot, smiles tentative but real. I caught the image on my screen. 5 faces, mine in the center, shoulders touching. Jen tapped my arm. "Thank you for doing this with us." I exhaled. I need to feel like part of things again. We lingered a moment longer, then began the trek back down, lighter steps carrying us to the cabin, where I'd promised chili, but also forgiveness and a second chance. Back at the cabin, the old propane heater hummed cheerfully. I directed them to empty the trash, stack the chairs, and sweep the porch. Good, honest work to remind them where their thoughtlessness had left me, cleaning up their mess, restoring the place they'd disrupted. They moved with purpose, heads bowed, but determination in their motions. When the porch was spotless, I beckoned them to the picnic table. "Chili's on," I said. "Let's eat." We crowded around the table, paper bowls of steaming chili, cornbread on paper towels, crisp sodas sweating in the afternoon heat. No margaritas, but something comforting in the simplicity. Between bites, I watched them listen, Madeline telling me about her new job, Claire nervously admitting her wedding planning stress, Sarah poking at her bowl before confessing she missed me. Really missed me. Even Jen, between spoonfuls, said without preamble, "I messed up. Leaving you to find your own way back, if you'd ever made it back, was cruel." Her eyes were wet. "I'll never treat you like a joke again." I nodded. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but meaning and impact aren't the same. They slurped chili in contemplative silence for a moment. Then Sarah raised her can of soda, to second chances. They clinked plastic. Even I raised my spoon in a mock toast, to second chances. We ate until the chili was gone. Ash pits of broth sat in the bowls, cornbread crumbs scattered. I gathered the dishes, wiped the table, and left them to clean up. In the bedroom, I found my keys on the dresser. Jen had slipped them in my pocket. I closed the drawer, tried the door. It turned, unlocking the cabin for the first time since I arrived. Downstairs, they were finishing the dishes. I slipped back to the porch and sat in one of the wrought iron chairs, the one I'd first found alone 3 days ago. The sun had mellowed to a softer hue. I relaxed my shoulders, the burdens of hurt easing. They found me there a moment later. Jen sat beside me. We have one more surprise, she said, fumbling in her bag. She pulled out a small aluminum envelope, a gift card. To repair your bike tires, tune up, a new frame if you want, and we want to take you hiking every year. Guys and girls, together, no pranks. Her gesture was small, but the thought behind it colossal. I placed a hand over hers. Thank you. Claire added, we've learned our lesson. You're part of the team. I nodded. And this cabin, it's ours. Next time we choose the weekend together. Sarah grinned, relief in her eyes. Deal. We sat on the porch into twilight, talking about future hikes and summer plans. No laughter at my expense, just warm, sincere conversation. The campsite lanterns flickered on, fireflies began their dance, and a gentle breeze carried the smell of pine smoke. In that moment, I realized the prank had ultimately brought us closer. Shattered complacency, forced apologies, and opened the path to understanding. They'd left me to fend for myself, only to discover that abandoning someone never builds a team. Reconciling does. When the stars emerged, we leaned back, shoulders brushing, and watched the sky in comfortable silence together. And I knew that if they ever thought another prank, they'd first remember what they'd put me through, and how much more powerful respect could be. Because laughter is sweetest when it's shared, not at someone's expense. And I, for one, wasn't in the mood for jokes anymore. I was in the mood for family.